Welcome to Clear Vision Wednesday. I'm Claudia Mühlenweg. I'm your host. I'm the founder of the Naturally Clear Vision Institute. Subscribe to this channel right now. This is all about vision improvement, keeping your eyes healthy, improving your vision naturally. These are all the things that I'm going to be 65 in 3 weeks. And when we get to this age, we often hear the eye doctor's like, oh, you have a cataract. Oh, that's normal. It's age related. And today we're going to talk about why this is not true. And I'm going to bring on my dear friend and mentor, Dr. Ritamarie Loscalzo. Welcome, Dr. Ritamarie.
Hi.
So you're the founder of the Institute of Nutritional Endocrinology, and I remember watching your very first class in 2018, and I had no idea that so many things were wrong with my metabolic health. I was like, you talked about belly fat and blurry vision and brain fog and fatigue, and I'm like, damn, that's me. So maybe explain, and we're going to talk about the eye conditions in a second, but explain to us a little bit, like what does it mean? We hear this word all the time, metabolic health. What does that even mean?
Yeah. So yes, it's new that we hear that word all the time. I've been working on that for decades. And when I first started teaching people about it, people they didn't get it. They only got, oh, I have belly fat, I have brain fog, I'm exhausted, whatever. But metabolic health is really about how your body, how our bodies process the fuel from out there and make it work in here, basically. I mean, that's basically it. So how do we take the food that we eat, the water that we drink, and all the things that make us who we are, right? Who put us together? How does it turn? There's so many processes in the body. And metabolic health is how we turn that around. So blood sugar is related, thyroid is related, your digestion is related, your breathing is related. All of that stuff is related to taking that morsel of food that you eat and turning it into energy and turning it into cells that get repaired. But I do want to say right up front, this startling statistic, and this statistic I first heard, they first measured it back in 2018 and then remeasured it in 2022. And they estimated that 93% of the population, 93% of the population, that is way more than half, that is way more than the majority, is metabolically unwell. Unwell, right? And they did it by measuring certain criteria, waist-hip ratio, blood glucose, blood pressure, cholesterol levels. And only 7% of the population passed the criteria that they're metabolically well. So when I talk to people, I say, well, what do you think the chances are that you're metabolically well? That you would fall into that 7%? Do you feel full of energy all the time? Is your brain working well? Is your vision clear? Where do you fall? That's what metabolic health is. And it's so important and it's so overlooked. I'm so glad that it's being talked about these days because
Me
it never.
too. And I learned so much from you. And it's like, I remember back in the day, people always say, well, my metabolism is slow and that's why I gain more weight. And you can eat all these things. But I learned from you, it's a little bit different. But before we get into the nitty-gritty of metabolic health, like, what is it about eye diseases? Because eye doctors, like I said in the beginning, a lot of times, eye doctors say, oh, it's age related. I actually heard eye doctors say at 40 you get readers, at 50 you get bifocals, at 60s you get a cataract, in your 70s you get glaucoma, in your 80s you get age-related macular degeneration, and then at that point I think you die, whatever. But so like, why is it like? Can explain to us a little bit because even when I first met you, I was already educated on vision and I was always interested in nutrition, but I didn't really connect the dots so much to all these different eye diseases that affect different parts of the eye. That's another thing we need to know. But how does that connect to metabolic health? Can you maybe give us a high level overview and then we can go a little bit deeper?
Yeah, I'll give you a high level overview, but then there is a lot of details. So one of the long-term side effects, quote unquote, long-term side effects of diabetes is blindness, right? Retinopathy. It's a disease called diabetic retinopathy. What most people don't realize is that that starts way before the diagnosis of diabetes is slapped onto a person. Right. So what happens is the elevated blood sugars beyond what the body really needs causes an issue with the eyes. It causes the blood circulation, the nerve circulation to be damaged in the eyes, and we start to go blind. And I had this happen, really early on, but in my practice of working with people who were not diabetic. But when we started to look at, are they optimally metabolically well? No, they had elevated hemoglobin A1C. I can tell you what all that means. They had elevated insulin. They had other things going on. And all of a sudden, they had never been diagnosed with diabetes. They even said to their doctor, my fingers and toes are tingling all the time. And then they started to say, my vision's getting blurry. Do I have diabetes? And the doctor would say, no, no, no. Well, it's because their criteria for measuring that is way off. And it turned out he had diabetic retinopathy and he was never diagnosed as diabetic. He had elevated blood sugar. Yes. He had elevated insulin. Yes. He had elevated hemoglobin A1C, which are measures of your metabolic health. But he wasn't diagnosed with diabetes, yet he lost his vision. Okay. So it has to do with the circulation and the nerve supply. The imbalance in metabolic health creates damage to the microcirculation. And we know how important that is in the eyes. And that if, an ophthalmologist or an optometrist takes a look in the back of the eyes, you can see the blood vessels. You can't see that in other parts of the body, but you can actually look in the eyes and see it. You can see if there's hypertension, high blood pressure. You can see if there's thickening of the vessels in the eyes, right? And so because the eyes are so tiny and they're so delicate and they're so complex, they get damaged before other places. The kidneys also get damaged before other places. The little fingers and toes get damaged. And that's all as a result of that metabolic health. Glaucoma, high pressure can be related.
So is it a problem? So what I'm hearing you say, I think there's several factors that are a problem. First of all, I do want to say what you just touched on. It's super important. I recommend seeing an ophthalmologist, and you have to get a dilated pupil exam, which I recently did, which is kind of sucks, you have blurry
Yeah,
vision. But that's how they can actually see all these blood vessels in the retina. And my eye doctor friend said once they know you don't have diabetic retinopathy, any damages to the eyes, then you only need to do the dilated exam every 10 years, and they do the OTC scans to check your optic disc and your macula, which is like that is just that's easy. So the dilated pupil exam is important, especially if you haven't done one. But I think so. I think one problem is that people do not see the eye doctor enough in terms of like getting the eye health check. But I think the other thing is what I learned from you is when we go to the doctor, and a lot of times they only test the so-called fasting glucose. You go to the doctor and then as long as the number is 99 or less, it says normal on the lab results, right? So
right.
maybe but that you talked about the hemoglobin A1C, you talked about fasting insulin. I know I had to request these tests extra or
Right.
do direct labs or somehow pay for them myself because I didn't have diabetes. So they were not part of the regular maintenance. So
Yeah.
maybe explain a little bit like what's wrong with the current measurements when we get the lab results and it says normal, 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 and you're like, oh, I'm good to go. And like,
Right.
what are labs that maybe people should be asking for, even though they're not regularly considered as part of
Yeah.
explain those things a little bit to us,
Yeah.
maybe.
So one of the things that most people are shocked at when I tell them is that fasting glucose is the measure that the doctor will do on your annual exam. And as long as, like you said, it's 99 or below, you're fine. If it's between 90, 100 and 120, they say you're pre-diabetic. Over 120, then they'll tell you you're diabetic. It's the last thing to change when metabolic health is declining. So you don't catch it early on. You catch it after the damage has been done. This guy was just telling you about his fasting glucose was 98. No problem, right? No, but the damage was already happening. And nobody tested his hemoglobin A1C until he heard about it and he got it tested on his own, like you did, and found that his hemoglobin A1C was way elevated. Right. So what's hemoglobin A1C? It's what percentage of your red blood cells are coated in sugar. That's basically it. And it should be a low number. Really, honestly, it should be 5, 4.8, 5, 5.2. It's going to be something because they're bathing in sugar all day long. So of course they're going to be there. But the medical profession doesn't test it on the average person. They only test it when that sugar goes up into the hundreds. They go, oh, let's check your A1C. And then already there, the A1C could have been elevated for years, decades even, and that would have been an early sign. Hey, you got to do some things to get your metabolic health under control. So the A1C basically gives us the average of how high your blood glucose has been going over the last 3 to 4 months, because that's the lifespan of a red blood cell. It lasts 3 to 4 months. So when you test that and you find that it's 5.7, they say if it's 5.7 or higher, then you're abnormal and you're insulin resistant. Well, what if it's 5.6? Oh, you're fine. You're fine. You're not diabetic yet. Oh, that yet word gets me crazy. Oh, we're not going to test your A1C. You're not diabetic yet. And the
So
answer
what
to
is
that,
it? What is the, I know, so 5.7, and what is pre-diabetic? What are the ranges? Can you
pre-diabetic
maybe,
is considered 5.7 to about 6.3, 6.5, right? Once it goes over 6.5, then they'll say you're diabetic.
my
But
mom is
they're not
about
even
six
testing it.
five. My mom is usually 6'5", 6'6", and she is diabetic. And I thought it was over 6 or
It might be over
6'1".
6. They may have changed it, but
Yeah,
it's
but
somewhere in that range. For sure,
the,
6.5 is diabetic.
yeah, the doctor always tells her try to get it to 6. And my mom, somebody like here's the crazy stuff. I don't want to throw my mom under the bus, but somehow somebody told her, maybe it was a doctor, oh, if you have a 7.0, then you need to inject insulin. So all she thinks is, as long as I'm not a
As long
7,
as I'm not a
I don't
7.
have, then I'm good, right? I'm like, Mom, no, you're not good. So she's like a 6'7", 6'6", but it's like she had cataract surgery, her vision is already declining again, her glasses are stronger and stronger
Yeah.
and stronger. And she takes metformin, of course, all these medications. But it's kind of like, I think what doctors say is so important, because like that, again, you're normal, you're okay, or like, so those things that you hear and then they stick to your head.
They
And that's
stick and
kind
you
of,
think, oh, I'm fine,
yeah.
right? And so I want this to stick in your head. Don't wait for your fasting glucose to go high. And if your fasting glucose goes above 90, which is considered perfectly normal, there's studies that show that there's a 4 times increased chance of heart disease from that, right? Because as your glucose is going up, your insulin is going up, because your insulin's trying to get all that glucose out of the blood and into your cells, right? And in diabetics who are type 1, they don't make enough insulin, so they have to inject it. In diabetics who are type 2, they're insulin resistant, so they're making lots and lots of insulin, but the insulin is ineffective at getting the glucose into the cells, right? And those are the things that can be reversed. We've seen type 2 diabetics, quote unquote, reverse, I'll just say quote unquote, reverse their diabetes within 2 to 4 weeks. If
I
they,
had a student, and this is like, so I learned all this from you, and I'm super grateful for this. So she had I think stage 3 and stage 2.5 in different eyes, which is stage 4 is the highest. And up to this date, I never had this. I had students with early stage cataracts, and they were reversed, and they couldn't find them anymore. But I never had anybody with a quite advanced cataract see any changes. And so I asked her, like, what's your A1C? And she happened to know. She said it's 5.9. I'm like, that's too high. And then now she got it to 5.2. That's the last I heard. And it's now the cataract is a 1.5, stage 1.5 at the
wow,
most. So we know that. I always say this too. Sometimes it is too late. You might need to get a surgery, which is godsend that we have those things. But it's never too late to make changes, right? I think
big
that's really
changes.
important. Like I learned from
Exactly.
you, I used to smoke cigarettes, guys. I mean, I'm in Germany. We ate a lot of bread and we drank beer and we did all the things, right? It's like, but it doesn't mean that you're doomed and that you cannot. Today is the best day to start making changes. So we talked about blood sugar. You talked about asking your doctor for the hemoglobin
A1C.
A1C. And then when should people check for fasting insulin? Like, what is the order of
When
lab
they're
testing?
5 years old. Seriously, as soon as you get your blood tested, they should be testing for insulin, because it's the earliest marker.
Oh,
You
okay.
know how, kids get very hypoglycemic, right? They have
Yeah,
to
yeah.
eat
My
every
daughter
few
used to
hours.
get that. Yeah.
It's because their insulin is too high. The insulin goes high, it clears the blood really fast because they're not insulin resistant yet. And then they're really low and they're like, whoa, crabby, and they have to eat. If they could check, you can see insulin changes 30 years before the diabetes sets in.
Okay,
And if
so after fasting glucose, which they always do, fasting insulin, and then thirdly A1C. My daughter had that exactly thing, and they always told her to eat more sugar. She would
right,
black out and faint. And guess what? Now she's one of my daughters. She's on. metformin, she has PCOS, she has all the things. And I
Right.
didn't know. And
That
I'm
was
like,
the
as a
earliest
mom, you
sign.
don't
You didn't
know.
know. You
I
don't
didn't
know.
know. Okay, so fasting insulin is a good one. That's the earliest predictor. The A1C, other. So now we only talked about blood sugar. Obviously, we know that it's connected to. You mentioned glaucoma. I know. I think 60% of cataracts are based on some kind of blood sugar imbalance, insulin resistance, metabolic
Right.
issue. Glaucoma is the pressure in the eye, and we also know that age-related macular degeneration and obviously diabetic retinopathies, which are the
Right.
blood vessels in the retina, they're all related. Like there could be other causes, but metabolic health is one of these things, that's why eye doctors always say, like you said, the dilated exam, it's like eyes are the windows to the health. So
Right.
what other things do people need to like, maybe you don't have symptoms in your eyes yet, right? Maybe you don't, maybe you just wear some glasses. What are
Yeah.
other things that is super important in order to avoid the eye diseases, or like that you can talk about, like
Yeah.
symptoms or lab tests that people should be doing?
Yeah. So let me just say this. There's the annoyance symptoms that most people have that are just ignored. Just eat less, just drink coffee, whatever. Belly fat, brain fog, exhaustion, tired, hungry between meals. Like just ate a meal and now I just need something
Oh, the
sweet.
hangry. That was so me. Like
Angry.
every 2 hours, I had to eat food.
Right. All of those. And those are early signs that something is brewing. And I equate it to an iceberg, the Titanic, right? They saw this little bit of ice over. Oh, it's no problem. We'll just head into it. What they didn't see was the big piece that was under the water. When you have those symptoms, the likelihood of bigger symptoms is very high. And the bigger symptoms are this: when your insulin goes high, your blood pressure goes up, and the vessels, all your artery walls, they stiffen. So they don't respond as well when you need to run away from a tiger, for example, right? There's all that stuff that's going on underneath the surface: cancers, inflammation, all of the stuff. So it's really important, if you're having any of those symptoms, that you get those 3 tests done. Right?
Okay.
Fasting glucose, and the fasting glucose should be below 90, for sure, below 90, not below 100, below 90. Okay. The A1C should be 5.2 or below, like between 4.8 and 5.2 is a good range. Okay. And then the insulin should be between 2 and 5. Now,
Two and five. I'm typing this into the YouTube channel right now.
okay,
Okay. AB, I always have to remember A1C, oh
hemoglobin
God,
A1C, it's H, capital H, little b, and then capital A, the number one, and a
I
capital
got
C.
it. Okay. Okay. I'm like, it's also
I would
nine,
say
it's like 9:30
4.8 to
p.m. here.
5.2. Yeah,
And
under
fasting
5.2,
insulin between 2 and 5, you said.
between 2 and 5, right?
Okay, so this is a good thing. And honestly, those lab tests are not even that expensive.
Oh, I know.
It's so
Well,
worth to do that, right? If even if your doctor says, "Oh, we don't need to do that," I mean, I have so many stories that where I had a 40-year-old person call me and she had early stage cataract. I said, do you have that in your family? Because obviously there's genetic things and that you could have it as a baby technically. And she said, no, no, no. I'm saying, well, I talked about blood sugar because I learned that from you. And she said, oh, I'm pre-diabetic, but my doctor said I have nothing to worry about. I'm like, oh my God. So I think a lot of times doctors are just not educated on these
they're
things and
not.
they blame it all on aging when in fact it's just all these things. Like you said, I learned from you too that this doesn't happen overnight. It's like slowly, slowly,
Happens
slowly
all
over
the
the
time.
decades, things, get worse. And we don't always have symptoms right away. And by the time we have symptoms, it's often really kind of late in the game.
We do have symptoms. That's
Okay,
it.
yes, okay.
Those symptoms are, oh, everybody's hungry after a meal. Everybody wants to eat every 2 hours. Everybody has a little brain fog and can't remember where their keys are, right? All of those things are the symptoms. Kids, like you said with your daughter, and now she's pre-diabetic, right? The signal is they should be able to go, like, yeah, you're going to get hungry between meals, but not hangry, not like you're going to pass out. That's an imbalance, right? And we need to take those things seriously.
Yeah, there's also the jokes, you once you had menopause, it's like, oh, the when I was pregnant, the pregnancy brain and the menopause brain, and there's all
Yep.
these jokes around it, and like, like the 5 meals a day, or the people that graze, I
Right.
used to be that person, and I know how unhealthy this actually is. And so So I think a lot of the things also culturally embedded, and it's like, but let's talk a little bit about like because obviously the Institute of Nutritional Endocrinology, you are focusing on nutrition as a way to, and I know you teach a lot more than nutrition because I did all your courses, including the best one, the sweet spot solution. And I know that you have the pillars of like stress reduction and mindfulness and
Yeah.
um, you know, like it's not just food, but food is usually a good place for me. That was a great place to start because I saw immediate responses. So maybe tell us a little bit about what is something that people can do, you know, because I know you're not a fan of those, like everybody should be eating this or everybody should not be eating this. Like, what are some things that you can share today with, like I call them iFoods, or what are things that people can eat
Yeah.
that are supporting their metabolic health, or they can test and see if it works for them?
Yeah, so we talked about what to test, but the thing is you can actually test your foods, right? You get a glucose meter. Who's ever heard of a CGM? You know what a CGM is? A continuous glucose meter. I have one on my arm right there, see? And you can continuously check your sugar so what is it that's affecting you? Oh, I just ate this meal and it had sweet potatoes in it. And sweet potatoes should be okay, but my blood sugar went up the roof, right? Or I just had this meal and I had a banana and it didn't go up. So we learn how to adapt your diet to what actually raises your sugar. I'm not a fan of the one size fits all. I'm not the fan of the everybody needs to take apple cider vinegar before they eat their meals
My
and
God,
everything's
thank you.
gonna
I
be
hate that
fine.
stuff.
Like, come on, yeah, it can be helpful, but you eat M&Ms and you take apple cider vinegar, it's not going to change the outcome. So the things that everybody needs to look at, that is true for everybody, ultra processed foods that have sugar in them, right? Processed sugar is useless for people. Fruit can be very helpful for people, and there may be a period of time that you have to minimize it or eliminate it to get your the metabolic health markers working well again. But it's very variable from person to person. I see somebody eat 6 bananas and their sugar doesn't go up. Another person eats 2 bites of a banana and their sugar goes
Yeah,
up.
bananas and pineapples. Like I get the little tiny banana in Mexico. That was my favorite thing. They
Yeah,
had these little tiny bananas. They were perfect because I could eat one of those, but the bigger ones that
bigger ones are too,
yeah,
yeah.
it's too much for me. Yeah.
Right. And we just find it out. And some of the genetics go into this, right? So some people have certain genes, and I study genes extensively. I teach people how to read their genes. And I have a lot of genes that predispose me to insulin resistance type 2 and also type 1 diabetes, which is kind of odd. So I have a lot of that sensitivity, and starches kind of aren't my friend. They make my sugars go up. So we learn how to eat that way, but we also learn how to balance it. So what kind of things help? Well, things that are loaded with phytochemicals. We know that the colorful foods are really great for the eyes, right? Things that are rich in vitamin C and A, beta carotene, and as astaxanthin, and all those phytochemicals are super healthy for the eyes. And of course, everybody's in get their underwear in a tizzy, but with can't eat oxalates and can't eat histamines and can't eat
Oh
this and
God,
can't
yeah.
eat that. And like, the food phobia is rampant. And yes, some people can't eat oxalates and it can cause their oxalate levels to go up and their kidneys can create stones and all kinds of stuff. But we have to not be afraid of food, real food. So I would say eat real food, right? Stop eating stuff that's processed and has chemicals in it that you don't understand. And having good balance of fats, because we need good fats to be able to process the sugars. We need to have good amounts of omega-3 fats in our diet, not too much of the omega-6 fats. And so there's a lot of nutrition that goes into this. There's nutrients that go into it, right? There's vitamin C, like I said, beta carotene, vitamin E, super important, magnesium, zinc. So there's all these nutrients, so nutrient dense foods. And so what I teach people to eat in the programs, how to eat in the program you took, is how to customize it to them, how to measure by testing your blood glucose, either with a CGM. When you took it, CGMs weren't widely
No,
available.
I pricked my finger like 55 times a day. Which is actually not that bad as it sounds, but it's like much more convenient because you see the ongoing curve versus when you prick, you just get that snapshot in time. And I learned that
Right.
my glucose went high is usually 45 minutes to an hour after eating, which you were like postprandial. I'm like, what's that? So I learned so much, but I
Yeah.
think it's an important marker that we don't usually consider.
Right.
How much does the food spike? And my sister, when she could eat all these pineapples, and I like, I think they even talk about the potato or the grape people, like we all react differently to
We
different
all
foods.
react
And
different.
so when you have these tables of like high glycemic foods, and yes, for some of those that might be bad, but other ones you might be fine. And also
Maybe fine.
you told me the quantity. I used to eat this big bowl of blueberries. It's like, oh, I can't eat blueberries. And she said, no, no, no. Why don't you just do a quarter cup instead of a cup or something? And that worked totally fine. So I think it's like dialing it in, and you
Yeah.
feel so much better when you eat that way that it's almost. I think you had this phrase that I totally loved. Nothing. What was it like? Nothing tastes as good as feeling healthy does, or
Nothing
something like.
tastes as good as healthy feels.
Yeah,
Nothing
feels.
tastes as good as healthy
And
feels.
it's so
My
true
favorite
because
foods in the world, I will give up in exchange for this. Like you said, you're going to be turning 65. When is your birthday? It's soon, right?
oh, February 21st.
February. I'm going to be turning 70.
You look
70.
amazing.
Oh,
When you and
I
I are
don't feel
together, we have
70.
boundless energy. But here's the thing. So it's interesting. I want to go back a little bit. So I think there's a lot of like, I'm plant-based. I know you're plant-based. There's a lot of this, oh, what can you still eat? And I always say, eat every plant. I eat hundreds and hundreds of plants. So I think it's more about the enrichment of I discovered so many foods though. You like konjac noodles. I'm like, what were konjac noodles?
What was that?
I discovered so many things that I'd never heard about.
Yeah.
And it's funny, I watched this in Germany. I'm in Germany right now. So there's this show called the Ernährungsdocs. That's like means the nutrition docs. And they basically, there was a person who had like crazy, like sensitive stomach, and she only ate white bread and all this bad stuff. And so they put her on like this, like what you do, almost with the elimination diet, but like simple stuff. Try this, try this. And she had energy back, she gained weight back,
Yeah.
she has her life back. And then this other person, thyroid, Hashimoto's. And then what they had to do, which I thought was really cool, they had to do a food journal, write down what they ate that week, and then they kind of like, let's say they eat a bread roll, whatever, and then they bought all these foods and presented to them in like big trays, like this is what you've been eating. And it's like
When you,
when you see the amount of like, you know what I mean, versus oh, it's
yeah,
just a chocolate bar here, it's just a it was
it
so
adds up.
powerful. And the guys, how many vegetables do you eat a week? And then he said he counted like in his food journal six. And they said, well, you want 21 servings of vegetables a week.
Yeah,
But
at
it
least.
works. It works.
It works. I see it. I see the miracles happen all the time. Like when people start our sweet spot program, we had a kickoff call today, which is kind of an orientation, but the official week starts next week. And I was talking to these people, and sometimes when we have like this kickoff call, by the time we come back for the first call, and all I asked them to do this week was just measure. I said, don't change anything, just measure. But you know that they're going to start changing things. And usually within the first 2 weeks, we see people go, oh, my fasting glucose used to be 220 and now it's like 110. Like that's a big drop. And some people who have been on diabetes medication for 15 years, and all of a sudden they have normal fasting glucose. And I have to tell them, go to your doctor, because if you keep taking your medication, it can get too low. Go to your doctor and, talk about adjusting your doses. And we've had this happen all the time. And I had one lady. I live in Austin, and we had this potluck every week, every month. And she had come to this potluck, and then the following week she comes in, following month, and as she's walking in the door, there's all this commotion. And I hear people all like surrounding her. I'm like, what the heck is going on? And she had an hourglass figure. And they're like, what did you do, Nancy? Oh my God, what did you do? What have you been doing? I said, well, my God, you look great. She goes, I've been just following your sweet spot for the last month. That's how quickly things shifted. Yeah.
So I will post the link again. So the Sweet Spot program, people can join that right now. You have a very special, like it was 497. To me, that was the best 497 I ever invested into my life. I learned so much about like what works for me, what doesn't work for me, and also what, ignoring kind of some of the advice you get from other people and really understanding my personal health and what works for me is so much better and how it's all connected. I never had thyroid challenges, thank God, but how it's all connected because we think of hormones always as sex hormones, like, but I didn't even know that
Right.
insulin was a hormone. I'm like, oh my
Right.
gosh, it makes so much sense because you do education in such a fun way. And one of the favorite things that you do is like the food swaps. I think you had this a good, better, best option where
Yeah,
like if you want to replace whatever it was, like white bread with this is the better option, here's the best option. And so like it was so helpful for me to have these swaps and have a clear guide. You have created so many cheat sheets and tables and like it makes it so easy to follow along. And so I absolutely love this. But there was a question that somebody posted that I think is really important to know. We talked about these ranges, and somebody was asking, does that also apply to children, like for children and teens, like those ranges you talked about, fasting,
that's a
glucose?
great question. And for some labs, there are pediatric ranges. For glucose, the 80s, it's still considered a good range. For A1C, the same thing, because it's a percentage, right? It's what percentage. And I think they all apply to children. Yeah.
Good
It's
to
a red
know.
flag if you get your teen tested and their fasting glucose is 20 or 30, even though that's the 20 would be like on the border of the normal range. But again, who wants to be normal, right? And with kids, it contributes to ADD and, learning disabilities and all that other stuff when their metabolic health is out of whack.
And so much, I mean, so much of like, I mean, even vision problems, learning disabilities. I met some experts in ADHD who talked about getting them off with dairy and gluten. I'm like, wait, why that? Because it's inflammatory. So that we have to, once we understand all these processes better and we realize it's not so like mental health and physical health is really one, like it all goes together. I think it's so important. And big part of what I do, and I know you did my program too. I'm all about education and empowering. I'm the last person who wants to see people for years and years and years. I want
Oh,
you, I want, and you're the same way. You're all about education, making it easy, making it super easy to follow those things, right? And so really like I can't say enough. And obviously I joined your bigger programs and it really changed my life in a way. And because that was a free class that you did, and I was like, I had belly fat, I had brain fog. Every afternoon I felt like my head was falling on my desk. I was so
yeah.
tired. And I was like you said, every 2 hours, I had to always
Yep.
eat snacks, always. And I thought
Yep.
that was normal. Like you said, I thought like, oh, I'm over 40 or over 50 at the time, like that's just normal, and it's not normal. And also these eye
No,
diseases, they're not normal. At some point,
yeah.
we will get older, we get more wrinkles, but there's no need to get a cataract or glaucoma or AMD. Obviously there's other things like toxic exposure, heavy
Right.
metals,
Right.
steroids, smoking, like, but when we talk about nutrition, and I know you talked about other things, stress release, how you see your life. We have so much in alignment. So
Yeah.
we I posted the link in the chat and YouTube as well, which gives people like a different like recipes and things. And you can
Yep.
also join the Sweet Spot. So tell us a little bit about the Sweet Spot solution, which is starting right now. So anybody who's like, you know what, I want to take
Oh, and health.
control
Yeah.
over my eye health and my overall health and my energy and everything. Tell people a little bit about the Sweet Spot program.
Sure, sure thing. And the link I gave you, some of my links weren't working, so we gave you a link to a page that has a link to all the gifts that we've done over the last few weeks. So it has like 4 different guides, and one's a recipe guide for brain health. So if brain fog's your issue, that's a good one. And it also has 3 different webinars. We call them learning labs, where you learn about metabolic health. That's all on that page. And then there's all the information about joining the Sweet Spot. And it's a metabolic reset, basically. So we start out by helping you to learn how to test, and then we take you into 30 days of a customized metabolic reset where we're helping you to design it exactly for you based on the results you got from which foods made your sugar go up, which didn't. And we're there where you've got weekly calls. You've also got access. We were giving people access to our membership site for 3 months. So you have access to all the recipes I've ever made. And you're like, oh, I don't know about this gluten-free stuff. Well, you'll never know you're gluten-free when you eat my recipes because
I know
they're
your food is
really,
so good. Oh my God. So yes, this is a literally to me, this is a no-brainer to do because you learn so much. And I think you can also continue to watch the trainings later on. But to me, it wasn't as hard as I thought about, measuring my glucose. And actually, I got other family members who had tried to lose their weight for years with everything, nothing worked. But then pricking your finger and seeing exactly what happens
Exactly what
is
happens.
so fascinating, you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
so you learn so much about yourself. And I think that's just the number one thing is like, and how your energy improves
Oh,
or your
yeah, how
skin
your body
glows.
responds, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
And the thing about it is too, it's much easier now because you can get a CGM on Amazon. You can go on there and there's one I'm wearing is I got it on Amazon. It's called the Stelo, Stelo, and you have it by tomorrow. And so it's a real easy way to be
Hello.
monitoring your sugar. Stelo, Stelo.
Aha, I only tried Lingo. So when I did your program back then, you know, we had to prick our fingers. I mean, you can get a really inexpensive the
Yeah,
Rely on one at Walmart for $9, and it's really inexpensive. But you have to do prick your finger and do the little blood
regularly.
drop. The CGMs, they last for 2 weeks and they are more affordable. And you know, usually diabetics get them from the health insurance, but they've gotten so much more affordable. And I don't have one in right now. So I usually what I do, I go through periods. I pretty much know what works for me, but then I go through periods. I also want to see my sleep, what's
Yeah.
happening in my sleep, what happens after exercise, because that's another big thing that you taught us, were these little 30-second exercise bursts. And now I'm doing this all the time. When I'm brushing my teeth, I'm doing going down, what is it called?
Yes,
Squats
squats. Yes,
squats
yes,
or I
yes.
do calf raises or I whenever I do these little mini because it's so empowering and it helps you to for your blood sugar afterwards to come a little
Getting,
lower. And you can do a lot of these things that are really easy. It's not about being a perfectionist. And once you learn these kind of swaps, they become automatic,
they
you know.
become
It's like
automatic, right?
and I think that's one thing with your course is just like mine. Initially, you have to learn a little bit, like there's a little bit of a more of a commitment to learn, understand all these things. But then sooner or later, you don't have to look anything up. You know what foods work for you, what you like, and it's easy. So,
Yeah.
and you have so many good recipes. Do you still do the recipes with the sweet spot so people can still get all the recipes,
Oh, the
right?
book, yeah, it's a 250-page book with the
Oh
menu
my God.
plans and recipes. But what we're doing right now is you get access to my entire recipe collection. Every book I've ever written, every video I've ever done. You learn to make pizza and bagels and,
Your
all this
ice
stuff.
cream in the summer, your
Ice
ice
cream.
cream. Oh my God. It's so,
Yeah,
it's, you call it nice cream, right? Because it's so delicious and healthy though.
yeah, yeah. All of that stuff.
It's
Right.
so good. It's like I was at your house last year in April for a week and we like every day we were like feasting with all, but it
Yeah.
was all healthy and so
Healthy stuff.
delicious. You wouldn't
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Yeah.
so we will have our little backstage Clear Vision Club chat. I don't see any other questions on YouTube. But yeah, getting your metabolic health and not waiting for your eye doctor to tell you that they find all these things and don't trust these normal labs. That's one thing I really learned from you is that you want to look at the optimal
You want to
ranges
be optimal.
and not what all these sick people have. And so it's always like the 99 blood sugar fasting blood glucose. It's to me, it's like the light is basically it's yellow, but it's basically almost red, right? It's like, but they're like,
Almost
oh, you
red,
can
but no,
still
you're
go.
still fine. Just wait till
Yeah.
one lady who joined our very first program, she had been to the doctor and she had a diabetic mother, uncle, they all had complications. And her blood sugar was like 115 or something. And she said to the doctor, well, what should I do? He said, well, come back in 6 months. And if it's higher and you're diabetic, I'll put you on medication. She's like, no, I don't want that. I want to get control of it now. And she was overweight and she had thyroid issues and she did the program religiously and after 4 months, I think she'd lost like 55 pounds and she got off all of her medications. The doctor took her off all her thyroid medications. She reversed her Hashimoto's. She reversed her pre-diabetes. And she was 65 at the time. She wasn't, like 20. So it's very cool.
I think one last thing I do want to say, people, you don't have to be plant-based to do the Ritamarie program. You can always add animal proteins to all her recipes. They're delicious as
Yeah.
they are. So no matter, because I love also one thing I learned from you, we're not into food religions, right? Because there's all these different fractions. At the end of the day, you really learn what works for you and you make food and you give
Exactly.
so many amazing recipes that is really delicious and that you like. And so
Yes,
your brownies, I mean, all the stuff that you make is so good. Nobody would ever know
yes,
what's
I
in them.
know. I know. Yeah. Great.
Thank you so much and goodbye on YouTube. We share all the links when we have new links. We will update the links We also have your Facebook, your Instagram, your website, so you can follow her. But grab this freebie now and then join the sweet spot. We started, today was just orientation call, but this is the
Yeah.
time, the perfect
Yeah, it's a good
time.
time to
We're
join.
heading into Valentine's Day. You can actually eat healthy treats for Valentine's. It doesn't have to be bad stuff. Chocolate, dark chocolate is really good for you. I learned that from you too. So do this now, don't wait, and then really by summer you will have the bikini body. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
all right, thank you,
All
and
right.
we'll continue our
Thank
private
you.
conversation. So,
All right. Well, thank you
and
so much for having me.
follow Ritamarie, subscribe to our channel, and then also subscribe to
Yeah.
this channel. And thank you for being here and sharing this with
Oh,
us. You
sure.
were
No
one of
problem.
the biggest influences for me. So,
Well, thank you. And on YouTube, it's Metabolic Health Solutions is my channel. You can find me there. Everything else is just Dr. Ritamarie, Dr. Ritamarie, but
all right.
Metabolic Solutions.
If you
Okay.
have questions on YouTube, type it in.